Hello everyone and welcome to this episode, the transition one, of the Women Talking About Learning podcast. I'm Andrew Jacobs. We transition throughout our lives, whether it be personal, careers or life in general. In some cases it might be risky, but we take a leap of faith and trust our instincts. The outcomes may be positive or negative, but you'll never know unless you try. We wanted to uncover this a bit, and to chat about this further we have three awesome guests. Our first guest is Chrysa Vazitari. Chrysa is a Silver Award winner as the Best EMEA coach. She's focusing on career advancement, career pivots and burnout prevention. She's a PCC-certified coach by ICF, and she's using different methodologies in her coaching, like Lego serious play, phototherapy, embodiment to support self-discovery, and to keep her sessions and workshops fun and engaging. Our next guest is Krystyna Mailer. Krystyna is an instructional and graphic design specialist with expertise in visual communication, e-learning course development, video creation and job aid design. Known for her ability to transform complex information into clear and engaging learning materials, her mission is to create solutions that are both impactful and practical. Our final guest is Juliet Morris. Juliet is a multi-award-winning leader and coach dedicated to helping people create purpose-driven, sustainable futures. With expertise in leadership, sensemaking and coaching, that's clean language, executive coaching and mental fitness, she partners with those seeking meaningful progress. Currently, Juliet is Chief People and Culture Officer at the UK Dementia Research Institute. Recorded in early January 2025, this is Women Talking About Learning. This is Chrysa, Krystyna and Juliet talking about transition.
Hello, Chrysa. Lovely to meet you.
Hi, Juliet. It's so nice to be here. And I want to say also hi to Krystyna. It's nice to see you here. How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you, Chrysa?
I'm good. And I'm very excited actually about this topic. We talk about transitioning, and I would love to actually hear why we are all here.
I think when I was given the list of topics, I was drawn to the word transition, which is why I'm here. Krystyna, what about you?
Yeah, probably similar. So I've come across from graphic design. So I've had a lot of transferable skills, but yeah, it's really interesting to see what other people have kind of come into instructional design from. And how about you, Chrysa?
Oh, it's so funny because I kind of consider myself like this experienced career pivoter and transitioner because I come from a really diverse background of what I'm doing right now. So I used to be a teacher of ancient Greek. I moved to Brussels 10 years ago and I started working on the EU bubble. So I was more like an advisor. And the last 3 years, I started my own business. I work as a career coach. So it felt like transition for me. It's like the key word. How about you, Juliet?
I think it's really interesting because I think I've transitioned in every aspect, probably all my life. So it feels very natural in some respect. And I'm curious to hear both your perspectives on what transition means for you, because I'm hearing that you spoke about career, but is there more to transition, do you think?
Yeah, I guess, like I kind of think with kind of transitioning, I guess it's kind of changing who you are. I mean, for me, sometimes I end up just I'm quite a curious person. So I end up trying to, follow my interests and, I guess, that's kind of how I've ended up where I've ended up now. And I just, I'm just generally just a curious person and I like to expand my knowledge. So, yeah. How about you, Chrysa?
I really love the question because it is about transitioning in every aspect of your life. And for me, transitioning is about growth. It's about like evaluating what you're doing, how you're doing it, and then just shifting and pivoting on just leveling it up. Kind of like, a game where you just like go to the next level. So it comes from curiosity because I also like the word curiosity. It's about being curious about life and like wanting to learn and to grow and to see more things. So very like the question, Juliet, and I very like the word curiosity, Krystyna.
think that's probably something we've all got in common, because I'm very curious too. So that curiosity sort of tends to, you're drawn to that energy. So you go to where you think, oh, that's really interesting. I'd like to know a bit more about that. And I wonder, just as you were talking about that, whether there is something that actually transition becomes quite a heavy word in the fields I've operated in. And I think we underestimate what transition we go through every single day, or every single season, for example, or every single year, whether it's career or family or moving home or whatever that is. So I'd love to hear what you both think.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say it's quite a big word. I guess, you kind of constantly are changing throughout life. But yeah, saying you've gone through a transition seems like this giant kind of thing, when sometimes it may be just like a kind of a small thing that's kind of gradually happened over time, and then maybe retrospectively you kind of think of it as a kind of transition that's kind of happened in your life.
And it's so true, because sometimes we forget to see all the things that we have done already. Sometimes like we have conversation, and whenever there is this word of like transitioning, as you said, like there's a lot of fear sometimes behind it. But if you really start taking facts and everything you've done in your life, it's impossible not to transition and to grow. It's something that you just do. But sometimes we forget to see the facts of that, to remember like, hey, these are all the things that we've done. These are all the transitions that we experienced. And once you realize that this is something that we already do, it becomes somehow, it demystifies the fear.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you talked about fear, absolutely, 100%. But having delivered a lot of change programs in organizations, I never talk about change. Because as soon as transition and change are quite similar, as soon as you talk about transitional change, it becomes this really sort of fearful big thing. What does that mean? So that's really quite interesting. And I was just reflecting on that this is a sort of focus on women particularly. How good are we as women in managing transition?
I think we are kind of like born for that. I think women are so adaptable. And it's funny that you ask that, because I was just like thinking, at one hand, we are so adjustable on transitioning and just like adjusting ourselves on everything needs to be done. But at the same time, there's a lot of imposterism when it comes to, like transition or like change. And it's again, it comes like we are doing something very naturally, but at the same time, the mind just throws these obstacles on the way.
Yeah, I definitely think that we're very adaptable, like Chrysa said. Just, I don't know, I guess I notice a lot of women, like myself included, if there's some type of change or something that needs to happen, my mind immediately goes through sort of like a to-do list, and kind of, I kind of get myself prepared and try and be prepared as I can for like the next step. And so, yeah, I think, just trying to, especially in this day and age, I mean, going through COVID, that was a very, unsettling, just strange time. I think, the more kind of experiences that you have that are, kind of out of your comfort zone, you kind of more likely as well to be a bit more equipped to, when the next thing comes up.
Yeah, I went from running a business to homeschooling overnight, and I just went, I'm never doing that again. So I think we can learn a lot from what we don't like. I have
well
huge
done
respect
you for like getting
now.
through. Yeah, like well done
well,
you
I'm not
for like
sure if I got
getting through that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I got through it. I think I'm scarred for life.
So we don't want to transition into a teacher now.
Definitely. Well, I did think about it for a while before actually COVID, and now I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But I think COVID also gave a lot of perspective and different meaning on many things that we do. So
Yeah.
there was like a big transition in the whole life for
Yeah.
everything.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and I always say it was the biggest shift in our lifetime and it impacted every single person in the world, didn't it?
Yeah.
So that was a massive transition, and I think during that, it's funny. I ended up speaking to a lot of people who were going through transition, but they didn't know, and it was manifesting in lots of different ways. So stress, anxiety, quitting. Want to do better, want to have a better life. Actually, I want to spend more time with my family, or I'm caring for somebody. And, it's senior people who were just like, I'm so done with this. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's a massive transition and change.
Yeah. Well, I was also one of the victims of transitioning over COVID. I mean,
Exactly.
I quit my job that year and I just started the whole business during that period. But what is interesting is that sometimes we need something really big to happen to just like transform and transition. And we can use different words. And I think sometimes words are very important, because you mentioned before, Juliet, like, you don't bring like in the companies the word change. And because it's so much emotionally charged, the word of change, because immediately everyone is like, no, we're not ready for a change. But when you just like, use different kind of wording, sometimes you just bring people on board. But it's interesting how sometimes we just need something big like COVID to happen to just like reevaluate everything that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of just get pushed out of your comfort zone. You kind of, it's an enforced change. I think sometimes I kind of like to think of change as like you either have like a wanted change or an unwanted change. And like a wanted change is like you kind of motivated, you're like, oh, I want to do something different. And like an unwanted change is that something happens to you and you're forced to essentially change.
I like that.
Yeah, and I think I encourage people to do the little shifts and the little transitions, because it's the little ones that will actually accumulate to the big ones if you realize it. And I was interested in what you said, Chrysa, about the wording. I think whether you're talking about transition or change or evolution or shifting or whatever it is, I think it's really important to understand what that actually means for the person or the company, because it will mean different things. And we can assume that it's going to be a big thing or a career change or whatever. But if that person or company doesn't know, they just want to get to here, managing those smaller transitions through are quite important.
That is true. But at the same time is like, getting there and seeing what is the need and how you deliver the need. Sometimes it's up to every expert how to do that. But it's very interesting, because it comes back to how sensitive we are about like the word of like change or shift. And something that I believe, and I think we all believe, it's something so natural, and missing these facts of like, this is very normal, like shifting, pivoting, changing is very normal. And I think the more we focus on and seeing all these changes, we build this muscle of confidence, because then we feel like unstoppable. Hey, I've done this so many times. I can do pretty much anything. And that's why I believe women are very much adjustable, that I said, because, okay, whether we admit it or not, there is like, many facing situations that they had to deal with. So women can really navigate around changes. But the thing is, like, if you don't take always a moment to just see these changes, you don't build this muscle of knowing that you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's interesting, because I think sometimes you're just so in the moment and you can just be so totally focused on like just changing, or you kind of got this goal in mind. You just sort of dead set on being like, okay, I'm just going to focus on this. That, yeah, sometimes you just don't take the step back to be like, look how far I've actually come as well. And, I think that that's also like, looking at transition in terms of, the the difference between where you've come from and where you've gotten to, I think that's also like a big thing as well.
Yeah. Is there a thing that I've thought of that for women particularly who transition a lot, move through a lot, change a lot, evolve a lot, is there a danger then that, and something I've noticed in women particularly, that transition, it becomes an accumulation of exhaustion if you don't take time to recognize it or go, actually, I'm here today. A year ago, it was completely different. 10 years ago, my life was different. But here I am today, and recognizing where you are sort of in the present.
Yeah, you can definitely just have the blinkers on, I think, sometimes, and just, you just are really like, oh, I'm just focusing on today, or just like getting through today. And then, and then it could be, 5 years down the track and you've changed exponentially. You just haven't really taken the time to notice.
Yeah, and I think we should actually normalize also some things about transitioning. I mean, I think we already start by sharing this, recognizing it, and just being aware of all the changes. But at the same time, I think it's also very fine to feel like this imposterism. It's fine to have like this uncomfortableness, or call it fear, call it like a mind blockage. It's absolutely normal the moment that you want to change something, that you're being hijacked about all these kind of thoughts. But the thing is like what you do with these thoughts, and how you decide to move forward. And so I think sometimes just because some negative thoughts that come on the way, that doesn't mean they should just be tuned in and get louder. We can always just like recognize them and just like, I hear you, still move forward.
Yeah. Having done a lot of self-work over the last 10 years, one of the things I realized is that having transitioned a lot, I've moved homes, had children, had divorce, marriage, jobs, different careers, multiple different careers throughout my life. I realized that actually I didn't have that self-doubt until somebody said, and I remember this vividly, why are you doing that? And then, then you start to recognize in yourself, you're hearing those questions. Well, why you don't, I don't understand. Well, that's brave of you, or, and I think we can take that as a negative connotation rather than, wow, this is, yeah, I am doing that and I'm really positive about it and I really want to do that, rather than, should I be doing that really? Not sure. So I think it's, and I wonder if a lot of that negativity and feeling that you're not good enough is actually reflective of the people around you, or the questions you get, the environment you're in, because quite often the norm is just to stay in your lane, keep going, have that regularity. But I think if we go back to the beginning of the conversation, transition is very seasonal. We're part of life. We're not meant to stay static, because that can be quite dangerous, as we saw in COVID. So I think there is that embracing that way of evolution, and we'll go through much more change driven by other people in the world than we've probably ever experienced in the next 5 years. So I think COVID was just the start of the big change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Have either of you seen that through, having those questions to you, which has made you doubt or question what you're doing?
Well, I'm very much of a rebel in that sense. Like, I do what it feels right. And I think something that I learned this year is to trust more my gut. I mean, I know it sounds cheesy and it's like trust your gut, but it's cheesy for a reason, because you're the only one knowing what is right for you. And I think sometimes, like, okay, we are societal wired to just, we're not so individualist, but at the same time, like, ignore what everyone says. Sometimes it's important. So I'm always saying, like, unfollow other people's opinion and focus on your own thing. It's not about comparing.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has its own journey, and sometimes it's difficult not to compare. But again, it comes with the awareness, and maybe noticing what others are doing can be an inspiration rather than just, as you said, Juliet, I do what I do up until they ask me, like, why you're doing this. And maybe it can come like as an answer to just, here's why I do that, because I'm a curious person and I want to experience everything that I can experience. Maybe I can ask a question to you, Krystyna. So in all these transitions, what were like some elements that they helped you do this path and feeling like, that is the right thing that I'm doing, whether it's a career, whether it's just like moving to another place, whether it's just like completely changing your lifestyle?
Yeah, well, I guess, I've had a few big changes recently. I got married last year and we also moved from Melbourne to Sydney. So that were like two very big changes. And I guess, I don't know, I think sometimes with like big changes, they seem like they can be a bit more kind of exciting rather than kind of like day-to-day kind of small changes. And again, like I guess coming back to kind of planning and things, I very much like to kind of plan out things, and I know like it doesn't always go right, but I like to essentially, try and do that, and then hopefully it kind of like works out. And I guess I try to be, like hopeful as well, and so have that kind of like positivity lens on things. And I guess going back to, people sort of, saying certain things, sometimes people, again, like they just are like, oh, are you sure you want to do that? Like a lot of people are like, oh, are you sure you want to move? And I was like, well, I think it's just a good opportunity. And I think if you just kind of have the lens of, look, if you take the chance, more oftentimes than not, it's going to be like, it's going to work out. Like it might not work out how you thought it would, but I think just allowing yourself to have those chances to try something new, I think that's like a really great thing to have in life.
And if you don't try, you don't know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess this transition change, what tips do you have I know, Krystyna, you talked about planning. Is there anything else that could help other people sort of transition and change? I think from a personal point of view, for me, it's around understanding where my energy goes and that curiosity. So if it's something that is, there are things that have been playing on my mind for, 10 years, and I've now I'm doing some training in it. So acupuncture, I've always wanted to understand 5-element acupuncture. And I've been leaning into the ancient wisdom, which is part of my background, Japanese, Chinese and English. And there's something that really fills me with joy in understanding that and some of the ancient wisdom that we've forgotten in the world. So very much drawn by energy. So I'd love to hear both of you what you think, what else could help people understand how to recognize or do transition?
That is a great question. And I was just like thinking like all the emotions and feelings and thoughts over every change. For me, it comes a lot. I definitely agree on the energy. So there's like something inside you that is just like feels right. It cannot be otherwise. I think all of my biggest transition, whether it's like changing countries, changing job, changing my whole like life, it just feels right. It might not be always thinking right, but it's just like the whole body feels like aligned to that. And to me, another thing that it's a kind of like a principle in my life is like this, quote of life happens for you, not to you. I think sometimes like, I don't like to just be a co-passenger. I like to lead my life. So there is always a strong force from my side that I want things. So how can I make these things that I want? As you said, you wanted to just know more and to learn more about acupuncture. So you just started doing that. And there's not right or wrong time. I think there is always this misperception, and I hear it a lot. Oh, I'm way too old for that. Or it's just like, I could have started earlier. I mean, sure, you could, should you know that that's what you want to do. But I think at the same time, the desires and the feelings, they come on the right time. And the right time is just like the moment you feel them. It doesn't have to do with age, time, money. So it comes back to just connecting with your body and feel what you feel and just accept that it is there, the desire and the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked Chrysa before when you said around like, it's okay to kind of feel negative emotions sometimes because, going through big changes, like it can be a roller coaster of emotions sometimes. And I think just trying to acknowledge that and try to not be so hard on yourself. And I know like as women, a lot of the times, you just think, again, Chrysa, that you maybe should be in a certain place at a certain point at a certain time. But yeah, that's not always going to happen. And I think, just being kind to yourself, recognizing that, there's no right or wrong way to do life. Like, it just, sometimes it just kind of just happened. And and I think as well, just again, like back to the comparisons, like just try not to. And of course, it's very hard these days because, you see people on social media and they're, doing all these wonderful, amazing things. But sometimes like that's not even real. So also like, I guess, recognizing that and being like, they're running their own race and you can also just run your own race too.
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps it's not a race though, and perhaps it's just life.
Yeah, exactly.
You're leading your own life. What's right
Yeah.
for you will be different for me and different for Chrysa.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some synergies, but as long as you can say, I've led a good life and you can create that life for yourself, that's just amazing. I was just thinking back on women. In your experience, do you think that women need or want permission to lead their life?
Very tricky question and very at the same time like touch a core because I think they do. And I was thinking now I worked with quite a lot of women in a very high level positions. They're directors, they're CEOs, and there is always this feeling of they're going to realize that I'm a fraud. There is always this feeling of like, I cannot relax, I cannot rest. And it's a lot about the well-being also, because I can't. It feels like you're constantly on this drive that you just need to do more and faster and more efficient. So because you use the word like allowing, permission, it does feel many times that women don't allow themselves to just take a moment and pause and breathe. It feels like a constant race, or at least this is what I see from my experience and working with women. There is always this constant race. And especially with transitioning, when you want to just, whether it's a job or whether it's a lifestyle, it feels like women need to carry more, but at the same time, we're the ones that we're putting ourselves to carry more.
Yeah. Krystyna, what do you think?
Yeah, I think as well, I guess around the whole permission thing, I think it was, I think I read something about like, do you know Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love? I think she kind of said around, no one's kind of coming to save you. Like if you want to kind of put something out there into the world, like you have to do it. No one's going to come and say like, oh, like Juliet or Chrysa, like it's your time now. Like, you go and you do it. And, I think around the whole, just permission thing that, sometimes like you're allowed to do things. Like there's no one who's going to sort of stop you. And I think just sometimes it's the only thing that's stopping you sometimes is yourself, because you maybe just have those self-doubts. But yeah, you can give yourself your own permission to do it. How about you, Juliet?
Well, I use that Elizabeth Gilbert phrase a lot and have done over the last 10 years. And I think it's really interesting because I definitely see, I think, and I'm generally speaking, not specifically, but generally speaking, that women are looking for permission, I think predominantly because there is so much going on anyway in their lives. So if they take that leap or, want to do something different or, whatever that is, that element of, does that fit into my checklist? How am I going to manage that time? All those questions come up beforehand. And I certainly recognize that because I tend to go through a quick sort of validation, is this right? Where's my energy? Does that feel good? And I think the more you embrace that, the more other people don't realize, they don't notice. It's just you that have gone through those stages. And I think, certainly, I think it goes back to everything we've talked about is actually it's a natural part of life to transition, to take the small moments. And I think, Chrysa, what you said earlier was actually it's really important to reflect on, where I am today to yesterday to last week to last year. And that's something we don't do typically in the Western world, for sure. But one that we should embrace. And actually, we've just got to enjoy life. So if we, I hear a lot of people say, oh, give the best life, whatever that is. And actually, that is it. If you've got to embrace those. You don't need to call it transitions, but those small moments and be happy. We get one shot at it, life, right? So,
yeah. And I think we forget that. It's just like, we just pass by from this life, and the more we align to what we want, the more we enjoy. And adding to that, like removing any guilt. I've seen I experience it also myself. Sometimes the moment you feel like, so what, am I going to do what I want? And am I going to go for what I really desire? There is a lot of guilt charged around that. And it's so bizarre because the only person guilting you is yourself. And so maybe if I would like just to put one thing there, just remove any guilt. That's all. You cannot be guilty for the things that you want and desire.
Do you have any types of tips or anything that you think would be helpful in terms of, not feeling as guilty?
Well, I do. There are always different kind of exercises, but one thing I always do for myself whenever it's like a guilt or negative thought or some fear, blockage, whatever you call it, just write it down. It takes so much power, like writing things down and maybe turn it into a small ritual, just tearing it apart. It's like, whether it's a guilt, you write it down and you're like, you know what, it's here, I'm just going to tear it apart. And somehow there's a form of embodiment of the whole process. We call it overthinking because we keep looping in our head always like, it's just like this vicious circle. So the moment you just cut this circle and just doing something else, writing it down, dancing it out, whatever that is, it already like makes you feel so much better. But that's again like a form of practice of things. And there's a lot of willpower and just like, again, being aware that this is a guilt, this is a negative thought, and how do I deal with that thought? I don't know, maybe Juliet or Krystyna, you have different kind of ways to just practice your own things.
No, but I really like that tip of writing it down and ripping it up, and I really want to practice that now.
Maybe it's my Greek way of being overdramatic of things. But it does really gives a physical element of this. Like, it's just like kind of like it's a t-shirt that I'm wearing and I can just remove it. So It's not a form of myself, but it's something that I can just remove.
I do a couple of things and with other people as well is write it down, post-it note it, particularly if you're an overthinker or a planner, post-it noting it and just getting it out there helps you sort of manage your thoughts. And the other thing I do, because I'm trained in clean language, is actually understanding what the word transitional change, understanding what that person is thinking. So when you ask the right questions, you get it out there and you talk about it. And actually that you can then link into what is it that you really want. So you might ask, what kind of transition is transition? So then you're writing down the first things that come into your mind, or you're talking about it with a coach. And then you can piece all that together. And that's So the writing down is a reasonably quick way, and that's very self-sufficient. And the other way is you get to embody that. So when we talked about energy, you go, actually, you work out this is what you're doing. I've had people drawing beautiful landscapes. I've had people, when they're stuck in that change or transition, it's because they're in a snow plow and they're physically scooping out the snow in front. I've had people draw beautiful images of sunshine because that's actually the transition they're going to. And you start to embody all of that. So there's a lot you can do yourself to explore that. And there's a lot you can do with other people. But I think probably out of all of that, embracing it and just going, okay, why is that sort of stuck in my head? Let me explore that and go through it.
It's nice because I love the different ways of everyone doing things. And I think that's also a big point of this podcast. We just met here and I feel like I'm just sitting in a cafe with you and we're just like having a very nice chat and you learn from each other. So it's so amazing. I think especially because we are three people that were very curious about things. So it's amazing to just take, as I'm saying, the best practices from everyone and see what fits for you. There's not right way or wrong way. You said it also, Krystyna, before, but it's about finding your own way and what fits for you and getting inspiration instead of comparing. I think we just it's amazing to get inspired by other people and to inspire other people.
Yeah, definitely.
Perhaps there's a message in there that actually people need to talk about it with like-minded, like-hearted people. Because when you talk about it if you find some other curious people and you talk through it, you actually pick up some tips and can, work through that. So yeah, great conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We found this conversation really thought-provoking and had to pause and reflect on what our guests had said a number of times. This will definitely be an episode to listen to over and over again. And please do let us know your thoughts and if you feel the same way. We really do love to get feedback from our listeners. A massive thank you to Chrysa, Krystyna and Juliet for their time and generous conversation. Their contact details are in the show notes, along with links to our website, future episodes and to our donation page. We want to showcase new and diverse voices talking about the things that matter in learning. We're especially looking for new voices and people who haven't done anything like this before. We particularly would be keen to hear from people to record the following topics: the data one, the HR one, the patriarchy one, the strategic L&D one, the adaptive one, and the meta-learning one. If you're interested, please do get in touch at hello@larn.com. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and next time it's the play one. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again soon.